Hello and welcome to Startup Steering Team Training for Focus Areas. I'm Amy Siegel,
And I'm Tina Weisman.
and we're going to jump right in.
You see, we have quite an agenda for today. So this is, we're looking at achievement goals. And so we are on the BTA section 4, which is for the month of March. So first of all, we're going to review the vision to action process. Then we're going to talk about those point positions, who's going to be busy this month. We'll look at the achievement goals, prepare for discussions, talk about discussion number 1, which will concern focus areas. You'll be identifying focus areas, looking for consensus, and then you'll submit those focus areas for review.
So far, in your vision to action process, you've set up your organizational structure, you've created a vision, you've identified vision data and your current data, and right now we're ready for goals.
So here's the folks who will be busy this week, or excuse me, this month. You can see that during the council discussions, and remember it's just the steering team this year. So it's your steering team discussion and consensus. And so February through May, you have a series of those meetings, which I know you're involved in right now. So you're going to be facilitating those steering team discussions. So council discussion person, get that ready. And then we will facilitate in subsequent years the council discussions. But right now, first year, you kind of get a practice run with your own steering team. And then you'll also be bringing that steering team to consensus. Okay, when we look at achievement goals this time, you see that we have 2 parts to this. You first have your focus areas, and then you have your SMART goals. So your focus areas, you can see, are very, very broad. And you're going to feel like sometimes they're almost too broad. But I always think of them as a big giant umbrella, and then the SMART goals fit in underneath those. So don't be concerned with making an area really broad. It may be all grade levels. It may be, things that you think, oh my gosh, this is just way too out of order, but it won't be. And as we go along with this, you'll see how it all works very neatly together. So they are very broad, they're very long term. They're going to reflect the gaps between the vision data that you've recently composed, and then your current achievement data, which you've been looking at and compiling. And then, as I said, the focus area is the big umbrella, and then those SMART goals are going to be grouped in underneath those focus areas. So you see then in the next column that SMART goals are kind of just the opposite of focus areas. And you can use that acronym for a SMART goal. They're very specific. They're very measurable and objective. They're achievable, they're realistic, and they're timely. So no long term here, very timely, year to year to year. Sometimes you may have, if you're checking very closely on something, you may do it by semester. You may just, that's going to be up to you. So, but you can see focus, very, very broad, SMART goals, very, very specific.
So we like to give this metaphor because we live in Indiana. We really like a basketball metaphor to explain how achievement goals work at SI2. So let's say for our focus area, we're super broad. We want to win more basketball games. And then we get under that in the SMART goals, we get specific. To win more basketball games, we're going to increase the percent of free throws made. We'll increase the percent of 3-point shots made by starters. We'll increase the number of assists made by second string players. So you see how we've got our big broad, win more basketball games, and then we get very specific with things that we'll do in order to accomplish that. That's how our achievement goals work too. So this month, your team will first submit focus areas, and then you're going to identify SMART goals. So just a heads up that your focus areas have to be approved. They have to meet criteria before you can start work on your SMART goals.
So in preparing for your discussions, you plan to have 2 separate discussions here. The first one is going to be, just as Amy said, you're going to identify those focus areas And then you're going to submit those to me for review. And then after they have met criteria, and if you don't get it right the first time, remember, you're not up for a scholarship. This is just us working together, so it's fine. There's no terribly wrong answers. It's just us helping you hone in on making sure that you get what you need. And then after that first discussion, it's been submitted for review, it's met criteria, then you're going to start identifying SMART goals. In preparing for your discussions, before discussion one, you're going to provide each steering team member with copies of your vision statement, and you can see that you can print that out. That's step 2 of section 4. And then you're also going to need to print out, and that's step 3 of section 4, the achievement data report. Fill up your printer with paper before you start printing those out. There'll be doozies, but that's okay because you'll need to write all over them. And then in preparing for those discussions, you're gonna, well, and actually before each, steering team member should be kind of prepared before you go to the meeting. So review that vision statement, and don't forget that vision statement's huge and it's lofty, and it sounds probably kind of impossible, but it should, because we don't want anybody academically bumping their head on the ceiling. You're going to review that student achievement data report. So you're going to scribble all over your own report, make notes and everything else. Trust me, it'll save you a lot of time down the road. You're going to identify gaps between the vision and the current data, and there'll be some big ones, and that's okay. And then you're going to look at achievement data that is pleasing to you. Where do you see growth? Where do you see success? And be sure and point those out and write those down to bring back to your meeting. And then where does it concern you? When it concerns you, that's where you're going to start seeing those gaps. And then you're going to identify student groups that may be experiencing those achievement gaps. So you're not only looking at the gap itself, but who is it? And sometimes it's going to become crystal clear to you that it may be just a handful of kids, but they're getting hit from all different directions. They may be free and reduced. They may be special education IEP kids. They may be, maybe they have a transiency issue. And so you see that, maybe it's a group that has just come in. I always think of migrant workers. When those kids come in, they just kind of have to immediately bloom where they're planted. And so that's, those all are important.
So as you're preparing, we find it really common, and this is why we encourage you to print out those reports, for people to get out highlighters and Post-it notes and different colored pens, and really mark those reports up with the things that please and concern you ahead of the meeting. And that way you come in and you've got your ideas. So that you can do it with the online report, but we really see people digging into that paper in a way that they don't always do when they're just looking at a screen. So that's our recommendation. Okay, so steering team discussion 1, identify your focus areas. We find that this meeting does go a bit faster if everyone has done the preparation work in the previous slide. Come to the meeting with your notes ready and share your findings with the rest of the steering team. And so when you share your findings, we want you to discuss each of the following. Be sure to have someone keep track of everyone's responses. You could do that on big pieces of paper, on a big whiteboard. If somebody wants to keep notes on, in Google Documents, and maybe get a projector so everybody can see what's going on, whatever works for you all, you're just going to want to make sure that somebody's keeping track of what people are sharing. So you're going to discuss the following: the gaps you identify between the vision and the current data, the achievement data you found pleasing and concerning, and which student groups you think might be experiencing achievement gaps.
And as you discuss this, always be looking for commonalities. And there again, they'll start showing up. It's amazing because we deal with this data every day, but sometimes you almost need to take a step back to just look at it. And then once you do, then you start seeing how many commonalities there actually are. You're going to group the data, and you're going to look for themes, and these may become the focus areas. So, there again, lots of jotting down notes, ideas, brainstorming, all that. There a lot goes on in this time frame with this with focus goals. And then note very specific data.
Each of you, when you do identify your focus areas, you need to make sure that you, and this is why we're telling you to keep good notes and to make note of things like specific achievement data. When you do the data entry, each of your focus areas is going to need a short descriptive name, and we're going to show you some examples, a full description, specific achievement data, and this is the data that the things that led you to believe there's a problem in this area. And you are going to want to include actual specific data. And then key takeaways. What are the key takeaways from the data collected for this focus area? This is a great place when you start making notes in here and in the specific achievement data. Some of these things are going to lead you down the road to SMART goals. So that it's kind of a you're starting that work, but really right now we're working on just getting the focus areas identified. And it's important to note too that you'll have 1 to 3 focus areas. I think 2 is very common. Is that correct, Tina?
Yes, high schools tend to have 3 just because of the all the graduation information.
Okay. So so this is the data that you'll need to collect for each of your focus areas. And here are some examples. Some focus areas can be proficiency, where we're looking at the percent of all students who are at or above proficiency on a subject of iLearn. It could be student growth, the percent of all students who make expected gains in a subject for iLearn. It could also be, if we're looking in high school for college and career ready, it could be something like percent of graduation cohort who graduate in 4 years. So, then we're looking not just at one, well, we are looking at one class. We're not just looking at all seniors all the time. So we're following one cohort through all 4 years. And then we could also have something like the percent of juniors scoring 1,010 or above on the SAT or 22 or above on the ACT. So those are examples of focus areas, and you see they're very broad, and we're not getting into those specifics yet. We're looking at big groups of students. We're looking at broad subjects.
Okay, here's just an example of, and you might want to, there again, you may want to print this out and or just use that slide as you start to build on these, because it's kind of nice to have this. So first of all, you're going to have a short.
These slides will be in the manual. So if you need to go back to this, if you want to get it from the presentation or print it out, like Tina said, the slides will be in the manual.
You're going to have a short descriptive name. So it may be something like students' level of proficiency at a grade level or a subgroup in math. So here again, it may not be as even specific as math iLearn. It may be math, because what you find sometimes is that if you have what we all lovingly call that class, that we see them coming, and we know even at kindergarten, they're going to be probably struggling and the teacher's struggling along with them. It's a good idea to start looking out for those kids right from the get-go. And that's probably even going to come from some screening from kindergarten. So if you see that you're sitting there thinking, oh, that's us, then instead of in that previous example of iLearn math, you may just want math. And that's okay. Because another thing you may want to do when you get ahead into SMART goals, sometimes there's a thing that rears its ugly head once in a while called grade inflation. And we'll talk about that more later. But as a result of that, sometimes you're looking at and you think, things are going well in the classroom. But for some reason, there's either a little bit of inflation, or it could be a perfectly objective grading system in a classroom, but the curriculum doesn't match up with what the kids are getting on the iLearn. So that may be some SMART goals too down the road. But for right now, you may put something as broad as math, and that's okay. And at all grade levels, that's okay too. These things are broad as all get out. So your full description, for example, if this were, say, math, we want our students at grade level and subgroup benchmarks to meet or exceed proficiency, which is, of course, the ultimate goal. Grade level mastery will be demonstrated through proficiency rankings on school or state assessments. You put that into your wording. This is very probably kind of just language centric for us because we are trying to serve everybody here with this, but you make it fit your school to give it the flavor of your building. And then specific achievement data. This is where you want to hit the ground specifically. You see that primary grades with local math assessments, you're going to notice some achievement gaps with the free and reduced special education gaps from the paid general education kids, and then you put in the exact numbers. And that is the latest data that you have on those achievement data charts. So you have the data there. That's why we're such sticklers on you getting that information in on those achievement data charts. You now have it, so you can drop these things in. And then your key takeaways is, those are going to be what the key takeaways from the data collected for this focus area. So obviously there's a proficiency gap between our subgroups at each grade level. And in this case, it's growing each year. And that's a real red flag. So this is why you want to really zero in on, even the subject area. And we're not even lasered in yet. We'll do that with the SMART goals. But we have got to identify what is going on under this big, broad umbrella of math. And then the external expectations, those are going to be items that are on the pop-up entry, which I'll show you here in just a little bit on the online demonstration. And there'll be some items that you'll check that will go along with that. So no need to worry about that one right now. Okay, then we have a high school example. The short descriptive name for that may be college and career readiness. And my guess is I will see that for sure, because that's probably one of the best descriptive names for a focus area in a high school, because this is going to cover the nitty gritty of everything that you need for college and career readiness. The full description here again, this focus area will monitor participation percentages and scoring percentages of juniors taking the SAT or ACT each year to determine college readiness. And then it goes on and tells about, what the marks are. So the criteria is there. Your specific achievement data, here again, go back to your achievement data charts and get that written in. Get a couple of years worth in there so that you can see, and always don't just put the percentage. Put how many kids represent that percentage, because your numbers will be wacky sometimes and you'll think, oh, we're doing great. Whereas if you looked at 2018, 2019, it went up 2 percentage points, but you had 3 kids less tested. So, there's things there that, you need to be looking at the whole numbers. And then you see that you've got kids on how they did on the ACT. So these are good numbers to have. And then you see that it's broken down even farther into English, social studies, biology, and algebra, which there again is important, because if I were looking at, something in, say I had 29 kids tested each time, my algebra percentages went from 44 or 45 to 56%. I'd want to know what was going on that was so good, because that's tremendous. That's what we want to see. The same vein there, if I had about the same kids number testing in English and I went from 83 to 56, I would want to know what was going on. So lots and lots of good information. You're really gonna depend on this here in just a little bit. So you want to get this right. Save yourself a lot of work down the road. Your key takeaways, you're going to, there again, you have fewer juniors taking it. There again, those taking it scored slightly higher from 18 to 19, but there again, fewer kids. And then in the next breath, you're saying, that they scored lower, but then the participation went down on some of these things. So that's, those are key takeaways. Look for everything that you can, and then it will just spell it out when it's time for the SMART goals. And then in this external expectation, that pop-up box will come on. You can see that this is a focus area for graduation rate. And then we have the criteria. So you can, and here again, remember, you can always pull up this criteria before you ever start so that you have your sense of direction. You got your roadmap on what you need to do. So I'm going to be looking for the gaps between the vision statement and the current achievement data have been described. And that is an Indiana rules and regulation. There will be a question there right at the beginning that will ask you this very thing. I'm going to look for either 2 or 3 focus areas. I'm going to look that the focus areas target academic areas and or student groups that do not meet state or local expectations on state testing. And this is all indicated on the report card, TSI report to the from the IDOE. Remember, this is when you first checked off your SIP uses. This automatically rolls in here. So those areas will show up. There again, the focus areas target students in specific academic areas, don't meet state expectations. Once again, that is the same thing. Each focus area has the short descriptive name, the narrative description, the specific achievement data, and the key takeaways, those 4 areas we just looked at. And then for schools with 8th grade and beyond, if you have 8th grade and beyond, you will need to identify a graduation rate as an external expectation in at least one focus goal. Now, if you are just a middle school, then you won't need that. But I think most of these are going to be, if you're a middle high school, you definitely want this on here. So you may have a bunch of middle school things tied in with college and career readiness, because remember that graduation plan actually starts in 6th grade. So with 8th grade and beyond, you start keeping track of that. And then for schools with any grades K through 6, you have to have English language arts identified as an external expectation in at least one focus area. You're going to have English anyway. You're going to have English and math, obviously. So that will pretty well take care of itself.
Okay, so once you have identified your focus areas, let's look at how we get those entered into the online system. Okay, so we started our process page. This is one of our demo schools, so it's not looking like yours will. You'll have lots of things that meet criteria. We're scrolling down to section 4. This is our achievement goals. And in section 4 currently, we are watching the steering team training. We have the links to the reports for the vision statement and the achievement data. We're conducting our steering team discussion, and this is where we put in our focus areas. Okay, so this school has a couple of focus areas entered. We're going to look at how that happens. So we currently have 2. First, though, at the top of the page, this is where we put the description of the gaps identified between the vision and the achievement data report. Yours will be much longer than this. This is just a little bit of holding text there to make sure that this works. So you'll enter whatever you need and make sure you click save when you've finished that. When we add a new focus area, we just click that link and fill out this form. We're going to add a short descriptive name. These are just text boxes. We're adding the longer description, the more narrative description. We're putting in specific achievement data, key takeaways, and then this is where our external expectations are. So this school has lots of grades in it. I think it's a K through 12, so we see both of these. You would probably only see one depending on your building level. So if this is English language arts, we check that box. If it's for graduation rate, we check that box. And those will get used later. And a little tip on this, sometimes when we're typing things in, it is helpful to make that box bigger so that you can see what you're typing. And when you're finished, you just click save and come back. And you'll see now we have FA3. Of course, it doesn't have anything in it because I didn't do any entry, but it'll be listed on your page. If you get into this and for some reason you need to delete a focus area, or edit it. If you need to edit, you just click the edit and it brings back your form, and you can make any edits that you need and then click save. If you need to delete it, you just click the delete and it'll ask, are you sure you want to do that? And you say, okay. And now we're back to just 2. Okay, let's go back to focus area presentation.
And now you're going to seek consensus. So you're going to send the focus areas to the steering team. You're going to ask, can we support these focus areas? Now is the time to speak up. If one or more steering team members cannot support the focus areas, discuss and make adjustments until everyone can. I have a feeling it won't be a problem because they're broad. And that's, probably the only conversation about this will come as if they're broad enough. And so just remember that the goals are the foundation of your school improvement plan. Foundations aren't tiny, foundations are big. And so this is that you definitely want to seek that consensus. It needs to be solid.
So, and after you have consensus, after your team feels like these are the focus areas that we need, you're going to submit those for review. Have a plan for responding to feedback. So if you all get feedback and Tina has some suggestions, you want to make sure that like, oh, we'll email email the group and discuss that way, or we'll have a Google document or whatever works for your team. Maybe you just get back together and go over that and make the adjustments as a group. And we're just a reminder, we can't say this enough, because the focus areas are the foundation of the rest of your school improvement plan. Tina does look at these very closely. And this is, an area where we really try to give you our best feedback and the benefit of our experience working with lots of schools. So please don't feel like you're being picked on or anything such thing. It's always, we're just trying to help you make the strongest plan that we can. After the focus areas meet criteria, you can go ahead and hold your discussion for SMART goals.
If you need help, you know where to find me. We're officially in crazy season here, so lots and lots of things are coming in. The repeater schools 1 through 3 in their cycles are already starting on their interventions and things, so that really broadens the time that I have to take on each one of those individual things, which as you will see down the road. So if I don't get right back with you, don't panic. I am here. I will get them done. But there again, email works better than a phone call. Just, send me an email. I go through those constantly while I'm checking submissions. And so we'll get you taken care of. If I need a clarification, I'll give you a call. So we appreciate in advance your patience, and we'll get everything done.